What do we do with this awkward moment when we're waiting for the caller to pick up?
I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys.
Is this Pete from Illinois?
Indeed it is.
How are you, sir?
Just fine.
What did you want to talk about?
First-time caller, long-time viewer, and I wanted to make a bit of a prediction. Hold on a second. I'm getting like double. Okay, there. Sorry about that. I was getting sort of like an echo there. Anyway, I have a sort of 2012 prediction, which relates back to the whole resurrection thing. I know that, Matt, that you dealt with somebody by the name of K-Bane. His name was Jake when he called the show on your show a couple of weeks ago. But essentially my prediction for 2012, aside from the obvious fact that nothing is likely to happen, is the fact that many of these people who are sort of New Age gurus and have a lot invested into making all of these predictions and claims about 2012, despite the fact that nothing will happen, will claim that something has happened. Either they'll claim that it was something which was only experienced by an elect few, or they will say that it is something intangible, like a shift in cosmic consciousness, which I know a lot of them are already hedging their bets in that department, or they will say essentially that some mass event was averted by the intervention of some guru. And the way that relates back to the resurrection is the fact that I think that there's a kind of a naivete when it comes to the resurrection apologists, in the fact that they seem to have this core premise that if Jesus had not risen from the dead, the disciples just wouldn't have ever bothered to make the claim that he was. They had too many reasons not to. But in reality, when we actually stop and look at situations in which prophecies have been disconfirmed in some way, what happens more often than not is that the groups will invent victory out of the jaws of defeat. We would expect normal, rational people to just simply go, okay, we were wrong, and disband. But groups like this, more often than not, they say, well, something did happen. It's just that you weren't around to see it. And I think that, undermining their premises for why they think that the gospel writers are reliable in regards to their claims is often more effective than just dismissing miracle claims outright. Because I think that when you do that, they kind of have this sense of vindication, like, well, they dismissed us out of hand, so ha ha ha, we still win.
Well, that'll be interesting to see. Back when I was hosting the show, leading up to the Y2K moment, for a year we had a segment on this very program called the Rapture Report. And basically what we did was, from all over the internet and other news sources, we collected predictions of the impending end of the world that were usually Christian, but not always. And then on the date that was predicted for that world-ending event, we would report that it hadn't happened, or usually the weekend after, because that's when we did the show. I don't remember. I mean, we went over dozens and dozens and dozens of these predictions, and I don't remember any of them making the particular excuse that you're talking about, that you are predicting. Usually, they would either shut up and you wouldn't hear from them again, or they would simply revise their prediction. They'd say, oh, well, I calculated it to be, on this particular day in the year 2000, but now we know that, no, I misinterpreted the number of legs on the horses of the apocalypse or something, and then now my new prediction is for this date. And then eventually they'd go away. We had to drop the segment eventually because there just wasn't enough to report. But we may need to resurrect that segment as 2012 approaches, because
Y2K12.
Yeah, son of Y2K. I don't know.
All right. Well, that's all really that I wanted to say. But like I was saying, I think that a lot of the whole the resurrection argument, they make all of these they try and play it as, you know, if Jesus hadn't been resurrected, then why would the disciples claim otherwise? And I think that there are examples throughout history of different religious groups when the prophecy has failed to be fulfilled. They'll just, like I said, they'll invent victory out of the jaws of defeat. I know there was a group in Japan where, you know, he predicted, the cult leader predicted that an event would occur on a specific day, and then it didn't happen, and he committed seppuku, he cut his abdomen open, but he survived it, and then afterwards, you know, retroactively said that the reason that the end of the world was averted is because he took the sins of the world onto himself, and that sort of thing.
Well, we should send him like a thank you card or something. There's a number of cases like this that touch on what you're talking about. I think, you know, to kind of diverge back to what you're talking about with regard to the Jesus resurrection and why would, for example, the disciples say that it happened? I don't know that they did. I mean, that's one of the positions I'm in. I'm not in the case of calling eyewitnesses liars because I'm not aware that I have any eyewitness reports at all. I have second and third hand reports. It may have been the case that they were lying. It may have been the case that they were delusional. It may have been the case that they were mistaken. It may have been, you know, one of those things where I heard it from somebody who heard it from somebody, and it could be. The reason I think that your prediction is likely to come true in part, and the reason I think we see some of this, some of the events like this, has to do with how much somebody has invested in something. Unlike the scientific method, where you have a great investment perhaps in your hypothesis, but you have a greater investment in the truth, so that when a particular experiment fails, your investment in discovery of the truth allows you to say, oh, this failed. Clearly I was mistaken, or I've done something wrong. I need to investigate and figure out what happened and rework things and keep going. But and I'm sure there are, you know, I'm not saying that scientists are you know, these you know, pillars of propriety and are completely emotionally divested. No, I think they're very passionate about it, but they have a larger investment in truth by and large. In the cases of these 2012 predictions or any sort of prophecy like this, what you have is somebody getting emotionally invested and perhaps financially invested as well in something that is a core value that to them isn't superseded by anything. It's very rare that you're going to find somebody whose investment in truth is such that it's going to override it. And so, yeah, you're going to have people saying, oh, well, something happened, or nothing happened because we did X. And then there's going to be others, of course, that say, well, we got the date wrong, and this is still coming. And despite the fact that they've obviously been wrong once, they're going to keep going.
Yeah, they'll milk it as long as they can and eventually drop it and try to salvage what's left of their reputations.
Yeah, you know, I got a word of knowledge from God, and he told me this wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, no, I 100% agree, and I think, you know, when we look at the disciples, you have a group of people who abandoned their jobs, they abandoned their possessions, they abandoned their families, and followed an itinerant preacher around the desert for, you know, 3+ years or so, and they had everything invested in that. I mean, my basic point was, I didn't mean it so much as criticism, but I think, like, even if we accept that the Gospels count as eyewitness accounts, I think that, you know, the resurrection argument can pretty much be beat on every levels, and so I feel kind of disappointed when people will just say, well, I'm going to, you know, well, it's miracle claims, so I'm not even going to take it seriously. And I'm going to hang up. That's all I got to say. Thank you for having me on. Love the show.
Thank you much.
Thanks very much for your call.